Welcome to the Dome Discussions Podcast. Your top source for all things New Orleans Saints. Powered by four voices who live and breathe black and gold.
Touchdown!
Every hit, every play,
Welcome to the NFL.
every moment. We've got it covered.
Let's go! Let's go!
What's going on, Who Dat Nation? Appreciate everybody tuning in to the Dome Discussions Podcast, part of the Be and Unknown Network. I'm Kyle Besson with Athlon Sports at Canal Street Chronicles.
I'm Nick Jennings with Canal Street Chronicles.
I'm Kelby Yacarino with Canal Street Chronicles.
I'm Drew Collings, Who Dat Dish.
All right, and today, to start off our topic, we're going to be talking about a recent Twitter post that went semi-viral on Who Dat Twitter. Football Forever reported that Tyler Shough is aiming to get his rookie deal fully guaranteed. He's seeking, and that's pretty obvious to everybody. Mostly all second-round picks are now trying to work how many of them can get their contracts guaranteed. And with Tyler Shough, his is slated to be a 4-year, $10.79 million contract that he wants fully guaranteed. And to me, this makes a lot of sense. He was the third quarterback off the board, just a more valuable position, and he's fighting for a starting spot this year. So to me, Shough looking to go get his contract guaranteed makes a lot of sense. And I mean, if you want my bet, I would say he's probably going to get that fully guaranteed. It might take some time, draft picks. There's only been 2 second-round picks that have so far even signed a contract this year. So this is a ongoing situation around the league where second-round picks are, struggling or fighting still to get their contracts, and that's usually the case. Now, so the Saints are rumored to move on if Shough and Rattler don't play very well next season for another quarterback in the draft if they're picking high enough. It's just been something. There's a lot of high-end talent in the draft next year in quarterbacks, and so it'd make a lot of sense for Shough to want his deal guaranteed, because if he is only going to be on a team as an official starter or a chance for a year, he's going to want all that money to him guaranteed. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to that?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the only second rounders that have been signed to this point is the number 33 overall pick, which was a linebacker, and the number 34 overall pick, which was a wide receiver. And like you said, the quarterback is the most valuable position on the field. So it's no surprise that Shough does want this guaranteed. There's also not much concern on my part because, like you said, no one else has signed. I expect Shough to wait till picks number 35 and through 39 are signed, but the Saints could also fold, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I, like we mentioned last episode, believe Shough will have this contract done before training camp, but if it's not, then look, that's a benefit in Spencer Rattler's part. But like I said, I don't think that's something that Shough wants, especially because the race is so tight. And like you said, he's also looked really good, so that wouldn't really be beneficial to him. So yeah.
Yeah, as you're saying, Nick, I expect it to be done by the beginning of training camp, and it might be whichever party folds in the end, but I think they're going to come to an agreement pretty easily. People were angry I saw people angry about this post when it did go viral, and kind of angry at Tyler Shough, and I really don't get that. Every second round pick, besides the 2 that you were signed, as you were saying, is going through the same conversation with their teams, and he's a quarterback who's dealt with terrible injuries, or Tyler Shough is a quarterback who dealt with terrible injuries in the past. He's dealt with a lot of benchings, having to transfer a lot. He's 25, going to be 26 years old, an older quarterback. If things go wrong this year, he wants those guarantees, which is totally understandable. And like you talked about before, next year's draft, the Saints could easily go that direction, and that quarterback class is going to be better than this past one. So if the Saints are drafting top 3, they're going to probably go for a quarterback. Tyler Shough's not going to want to deal with a bad contract while that situation is also going on.
I'd be shocked if it leaked into training camp, this whole situation. As you guys pointed out, every single rep is so important in this battle with how tight it's been so far. Now, Shough, he's going to want to get his money. The future of the quarterback room is so uncertain. They're great quarterbacks in the next year's class, or even free agency. I don't see them doing that. They'd probably build in the draft, but he wants to get his money. I don't blame him for it. It's going to be interesting to see which side kind of folds.
And I kind of want to
really just seems like the agents.
Yeah, so I kind of want to bounce off of some things that Caleb said as well, where he mentioned that Shough has had an injury history. His age, he's 26 years old, And in that sense, it makes sense for the Saints too. So this isn't like you can't look at one side and be, nah, I do think the Saints will fold first and be the ones to give him his fully guaranteed, just because that's going to be a trend going on in the league for at least the next couple of years, where second round picks are going to more and more get their guarantees. But it makes sense for the Saints too to not want to, to be a little hesitant to give him this, because he has an injury history, and even though it's not tissue injuries and these are injuries that shouldn't affect him going forwards, there's an injury history there, and he's going to be 26 years old. So I also do see it from the Saints' point, but this is who you're hoping to be your franchise quarterback. To me, it's likely going to happen where he gets his guaranteed.
Yeah, and I was just going to say what you said. This is just how the new market looks. This is going to be common as the years go by. Agents are just waiting to see who blinks first right now. So that's kind of why I don't have any concern with it when it comes to this situation.
And if if Tyler Shough is leading the race, let's say the coaching staff knows he's leading the race, then they're going to give him that contract guaranteed. If they think if the coaching staff think he's going to be the starter for this season, he's going to get the contract he wants. Quarterback is just the most important position in football, in sports, arguably. So an early second round pick, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets that type of guarantee if already those contracts are being given.
As you kind of noted, Kyle, he does have some injury history, but they're all bone issues. They're like 2 collarbone injuries or stuff like that aren't going to be recurring injuries that should hinder his long-term value. So I don't think that's going to be too much of a concern.
Yeah, this isn't a Taysom Hill situation where he tore his ACL like 4 times in college. This is broken bones that doctors have cleared Tyler Shough many times, and there's no injury concerns with that. Now, and it's also understandable why Tyler Shough would be scared of that still, because he is a little bit more of a scared quarterback in the pocket because he's dealt with these injuries. So having that same mindset in these contract negotiations makes a lot of sense also.
All right, and we talked mostly on this last episode too, so if anybody was interested more on some points that we brought up, you can go ahead and check that one out as well. But we're actually going to transition to something kind of bouncing off of last episode as well, where it was free agents. We talked over for free agents for a little bit. Nick actually mentioned that he liked C.J. Mosley to the Saints right before C.J. Mosley retired, so I decided let's talk about some more free agents, who's available now. So Nick, who would you like the Saints to go after that's still an available free agent?
Yeah, absolutely. I was bummed to see C.J. Mosley retire. I thought he would have been a really good veteran presence in the linebacker room. But now I'm kind of looking at the slot cornerback position with Delonte Taylor seeing more snaps outside. And in that case, I'm looking at 31-year-old Mike Hilton. Had some really impressive stints with Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. He's a solid tackler, over 60 tackles the past 4 years. Great in run defense, had a 91.7 run defense grade in 2025. And he can blitz the passer as well. He's got 4 seasons with over 10 plus pressures. And he's a leader. He's a veteran presence in the secondary, which the Saints have prioritized by retaining Tyrann Mathieu and going out and getting Justin Reed. I really think it could be beneficial for New Orleans. And look, if they do decide to keep Alante in the inside, then another guy that's still out there is former NFL Defensive Player of the Year, Stephon Gilmore. He is 34 years old, but finished last season with 9 PBUs and an interception. Had a down year in coverage, but like I said, a veteran presence could be beneficial for the young guys in the cornerback room.
And I 100% agree with you. And when we get to my choice of cornerback, because my position was a cornerback as well, the Saints have shown that they want to go after another cornerback. They're clearly not satisfied so far with their room. And again, we've talked about this before, but they targeted Charvarius Ward early in free agency, weren't able to give him the money that he wanted. He went to Indianapolis. They drafted Quincy Riley in the 4th round, still a significant pick to go ahead and grab him at. And then they signed Isaac Yiadom to a 3-year deal. So again, we talked about this before, but the Saints are not yet satisfied with their cornerback room, and it's kind of clear, right? You don't have a lot of consistency. You had now a 2nd-year player, and while he's projected to be a big breakout player in Kool-Aid McKinstry, you still don't exactly know what you have out of him, and Alante Taylor still hasn't shown to be that consistent.
And the cornerback room was never going to be a 1-year fix where the Saints were going to be able to fix it in 1 year. Trading Marshawn Lattimore is such a big move to begin with, and he's a star cornerback, your number 1 cornerback, and you're trading him away. Already that's going to hurt your cornerback room, but also losing Paulson Adebo in free agency leaves most cornerback rooms, if any other team dealt with that, in disarray. It would be horrible. The good thing is the Saints made the genius decision to draft Kool-Aid McKinstry last draft, and they are much better set up this season, and hopefully Alante Taylor can bounce back. But as you're saying, that 3rd cornerback spot, and we've talked about it throughout, I think, every podcast, every time we talk about the defensive back or the defensive backs, The third cornerback spot is just so up for grabs, and that could be slot, that could be outside. It really depends where Alontae Taylor is put, and also it could just be that a player switches with Alontae Taylor because the coaching staff likes that type of flexibility. That is such a big question mark on this team that I agree. Honestly, any cornerback free agent is a good free agent signing to me.
Yeah, 100%. And so on to that, what is your free agent choice, Caleb?
Yeah, I'm actually going sticking with defense, but I'm going with outside linebacker Matt Judon. So last season, Matt Judon was traded to the Atlanta Falcons from the Patriots for a third-round pick. He only had 5.5 sacks last season, and it was a pretty disappointing year. He had his worst PFF grades in both pass rush and run defense last year, and he just did not look as good as he did 2 years prior when he had a 15.5 sack season. A lot of this was because of the pressure of that third-round pick trade, and because that's a big ask to begin with. And also, the Atlanta Falcons have been dealing with edge rush issues for the longest time. That's why they went massive investment in the first round at that area. My thing is, this contract is going to be cheaper for Matt Judon. He's 32 years old. He's kind of now has less confidence from most of the teams in the NFL. He hasn't been signed yet. And guess what? The Saints don't really have outside linebackers on their roster. Right now, they're trying to move Chase Young, Cam Jordan, or I don't know about Cam Jordan. I won't say that, but Carl Granderson to that outside linebacker role when they play a 3-4 defense in Brandon Staley's main scheme. The issue with that is these are players that haven't really played in that area, and if they go into coverage, they're going to be burnt by offensive players a lot of the time. That's an issue. Matt Judon is an outside linebacker. He knows how to play that role. Now he's, again, 32 years old, so he might be slower and still might get burnt by those players, but still having a real veteran presence that knows what he's doing in that role and possibly even teaching the other edge rushers who's going into an outside linebacker position is just something good to have on that team.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you noted that I forgot to mention with the last two players. The Saints could probably get Mike Hilton and Stephon Gilmore on some really team-friendly deals, considering their age and their experience. It'll probably be a one-year cheap prove-it deal, to be honest, and that would be beneficial for New Orleans. And like you said, Matthew Judon did have a down year last year, but the Falcons have notoriously been a poor pass-rushing team for decades now. So I would credit a lot to the Atlanta there because he was great in 2023 with New England. So I'd be willing to take that risk, especially because a guy like C.J. Mosley is no longer on the board. I think Matthew Judon could be a great addition to the linebacker room.
And that was the main worry that I had. It's like, okay, was this more the Atlanta Falcons or was this more because Matt Judon's 32 and this is just the end of his career? Because the year before he got traded to the Falcons, he also had a down year with the Patriots. I forget the sack numbers, but it was closer to 3.5, I'm pretty sure.
Just 4 sacks, yeah.
Yeah, so he had a down year there, so that's another worry. But also that was a Patriots team going through a lot of transition. That was that was in 2023, so that's before like the Drake May team and everything. But they're still going through kind of transition. So that's understandable, but we're getting to the point of his career where is it age or is it just the teams he's been on? And that's going to be the question because this is also a very unproven defensive staff. We don't really know what we're getting with this staff, including Brandon Staley, who's been in the background with the 49ers instead just from being a head coach in the league. So we really don't know what we're getting. So Matt Judon's going to be a big question no matter what. If he could come in general, if he has interest, but also if he's going to make that impact in the end.
Now, I do have a question for you guys on picking Matt Judon because he is 32 years old. He has had a couple down seasons in a row now, and this is very similar to Cameron Jordan, who's now 35 years old and had a couple down years. So are you willing to take this money and spend it, even though it's not projected to be a lot of money, right? He's still unsigned, 32, and a lot of doubt. He's probably not projected to get a lot of money and won't get a lot of money. But are you comfortable giving any money to, and you seem like it, but you're comfortable giving any money to somebody who's going through almost what we watched with Cameron Jordan over the last 2 years?
So with the little expectations that I kind of already have for this team, and any good season's going to be above expectations, I think it's more important that to have a veteran outside linebacker, true outside linebacker, teach these players how to play in that position because the Saints just do not have that. Throughout the whole free agency, my two positions that the Saints were missing were left guard, and they got that with Dylan Radins, and then also just moving Trevor Penning there, and outside linebacker, because they just never addressed it. And it's such an issue on this team that I feel like they needed to address if they want to move to that 3-4 scheme. So I think if it's a year rental, that's perfectly fine with me. I don't think it's going to hurt contractually. I don't think it's going to be too expensive. So I would be okay with 1 year, but nothing more.
That makes a lot of sense too, right? To kind of test out Brandon Staley's defense, and you might draft some more pieces for it next year, but you just need to plug somebody in to see how it works this season. So it makes a lot of sense to get a little bit of a rental there just to kind of see more test Brandon Staley's defense than it is for Matthew Judon. And from there, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was always going to be a difficult transition from the 4-3 defense that the Saints have played for a while, and then into this 4-3 to 3-4, because they don't have the roster for it, or they do not have the roster for it. Their team is just not set up for it. So a lot of these players on the defensive line are going to be moving into new places that they've never played in, and that's another thing with Matt Judon. You just have a player that's been there before, and I just think this defense needs that right now.
No, I get you.
And I do think it's important to note that the year before his down year with the Patriots, he had 17 sacks and 69 pressures. In that year in 2023, when he had his down year with the Patriots, he had a career low 184 total snaps. So there must have been some injury issues going on there. And like we said before, went to the Falcons, who are a notoriously bad pass rush team. So I think it would be worth taking the risk, especially on a team-friendly deal.
All right, and with that, yeah, I agree with you guys. I think it works, and I was going to say it, but you guys said it for me. The Falcons' defensive line, for how the talent they have there, they have never really been that dominant over the last few years. Adding Matt Judon to that, I remember when the trade happened, a lot of people were like, "Oh no," because you had Grady Jarrett at the time. Matt Judon. It seemed like it's scary, but their unit never seems to get it together. Take this as full disrespect, Falcons. You guys never got it together. It never feared me. So, but with it being said, Drew, now who is your free agent of choice?
I'm going to continue with the trend of getting players on team-friendly deals, and with Gabe Davis. I'm not going to talk about him for long. If you want to hear more about it, just go to our last episode. Talked about a good amount about him there. But because of how much he's still getting paid by Jacksonville, the Saints would likely get him on a super cheap prove-it deal. I think he's got production back in Buffalo. Obviously a down season with the Jaguars last year. I really think he could bounce back and be a pretty big player into a weak receiver room. Provide some more depth. I think he'd be a perfect fit in New Orleans.
I could definitely see him taking over that Marquez Valdez-Scantling role that took place at the end of last season. He fits that role perfectly, could stretch the field, like 6'2". I know Marquez Valdez-Scantling was like 6'4", but he's got some size on him. He could definitely fill that role, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm never going to hate on bringing more wide receiver help into this room. And if you hit on it, you hit on it, and that's going to be great. But so I'm never going to hate on it. And if he gets cut by 53-man roster cuts, then that's what it is. But might as well have the competition now.
Yeah,
especially with how cheap it's going to be. You're not going to have to spend really anything to get him in here.
Yeah,
he's only going to command 1 year.
And I checked it last time. He's going to be getting paid $12 million, I believe it is this year, from the Jaguars already. So from there, he's already top threshold of receivers. So the Saints giving him a 5-year. He'll be a little more expensive than other because he's still going to get about $5 million around that. But he's still going to make $17 million as a receiver who had 200 yards last year. So, and the Saints need that mold of wide receiver still. They don't have a middle of the field threat. Chris Olave's seen to get his head knocked into way too many times going to the middle of the field. Rashid Shaheed's still a deep threat, hasn't really formed into a middle of the field. Yeah, so I don't want to go too much into it because again, we did talk about Gabe Davis a lot last episode, but he is an interesting signing. The Saints wouldn't have to pay a lot, and a prove-it deal for a young player, I believe he's 26, would not hurt the team. But to go into it, because similar to how you said it, I went with Asante Samuel Jr. Now, this episode was actually supposed to be targeted around Jaire Alexander, and that's who I would have gone. I would have gone with that same angle. A player who is not going to cost a lot because he's making a lot of money already. But now going into Asante Samuel, he's not on a contract with anybody. Oh, wow, voice crack. But he's not on a contract with anybody. But he is a young player coming off of injury, and I still think the Saints get him on a prove-it deal, similar to how they got Chase Young on a prove-it deal last year, where Chase Young was able to perform and earn himself even a bigger deal, which is still kind of a prove-it deal. It's a 3-year, $57 million, where it's not like everything's fully there, but the Saints like him, and they're betting on him. And that's it. So it's gone from a prove-it deal to a bet-it deal. And let me pull up my notes real quick. But Asante Samuel is only 25 years old. And if the Saints do hit gold with him, that fills out their cornerback room perfectly, where now you have your young second-year cornerback coming in, and he's been already shown a lot of promise. Asante Samuel Jr., he has shown to be a good DB on the league. It's just certain things, injuries, that have kept him from doing that. And Alontae Taylor has been better when he's in the slot. And the most prominent point about this is he was in Brandon Staley's defense. Brandon Staley drafted Asante Samuel Jr. Like we talked about with this defense every time, this 3-4 isn't going to be an easy switch, and you need players who have experience with it, more 1 year plug and plays, just to see how the defense even works and to convert your players from that. So first of all, I want to say I think Brandon Staley is going to have a year of what's the word I'm looking for, where he's not going to be judged so harshly in his first year because the team doesn't have that talent or the personnel for it exactly. So I think he's going to be a little lenient on his year one, and a lot of these is going to be 1 year deals with some players just to see how it works. But Asante Samuel, 25 years old, and the Saints, again, like I said earlier when we talked about Mike Hilton, the Saints have shown they want to add another cornerback to the room. They have been very aggressive in free agency after going after cornerbacks, and I think after his checkup in early July, which is coming up soon now, in a week, 2 weeks from now, I think there's mutual interest, and I think the Saints do actually end up going ahead and grabbing Asante Samuel for free agency.
Yeah, and I'd love that. Coming off of neck surgery, Saints signed Chase Young last year. Coming off neck surgery, ended up playing 17 straight games. So if they can get something out of that, especially being on a prove-it deal from Asante Samuel Jr., I think it could be really beneficial. We've mentioned before he's played on the big stage, showed up on the big stage, and I really think the familiarity within the scheme is extremely significant.
Yeah, and if I had to choose one signing out of all the signings that we said, that's probably the most likely. It's this one because it's just a match made in heaven. It's played for Brandon Staley, knows the scheme. A lot of teams might not like him as much. Brandon Staley, I have a feeling, clearly will like him, want to bring Asante Samuel in, and he just fits perfectly. As you said, he's young. I would love this deal to be 2 years. It makes sense for it to be 1 year. It probably is going to be 1 year. But if it's 2 years, it makes it a lot better because if he comes back healthy, if he plays well, then it's going to look the Saints won't have to worry about corner next year, which is a wonderful thing. Also, I don't think he would command the same exact contract as Chase Young, just because where Chase Young was drafted, how Chase Young did play in the league when he was healthy. But I do think it's going to be similar in the sense where it's like escalator bonuses, where it's a certain amount of games he plays if he's injured and stuff like that. But yeah, I would love the signing. And the only worry with him is tackling. That's like the main worry with him. And as we all saw last season, when the Saints didn't tackle, it was ugly to watch. So that's going to be an issue, but his tackling got better under Brandon Staley. So that's going to be a hope that he could keep that up and keep progressing because he showed development. So that's the hope.
He'd be a fabulous signing. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. We've all been over it. Position of need, player that has experience with a defensive coordinator. There's no reason why the Saints shouldn't want to get Samuel, barring any medical things or setbacks.
Yeah, and I just want to say, because the Chase Young comparison to me is actually a really good one, and it's why I brought it up. Because if this signing does work out, it means a lot for the Saints. Just similar to how I said with the Gabe Davis thing. I know it was brief when we said it then, but if you can find these players who got to prove it to you that they can play, so you're not betting too much on them, and you're getting a young player who is clearly talented. Asante Samuel was a first-round pick. Chase Young was a first-round pick. When you get these players and they come prove it to you that they can play, it also means, now I know Caleb, you said you want him on a 2-year deal. It could be a 1-year deal. But there's a lot of respect there that you bet on him. And he might want to come back to New Orleans just to do that again. And it really would fill out the cornerback room. Now, with it being said, we get to move on to our trivia part, which this week's, I was going to give you guys the years, but we talked over it briefly, and Nick wants it to be a little difficult at first, so I'm just going to give you all 6 of the teams that I have on here. These are all 6 teams that he's taken snaps for. If he was on a team but never took a snap cut before, it would not be on here. So he was drafted by the Titans, went to the Rams, the Packers, the Raiders, the Saints, and the Chargers.
Is DJ Swearinger?
It's not DJ Swearinger. I think Swearinger was drafted by Washington.
Is it Jared Cook?
It is Jared Cook. Wow, okay. You know what, Nick? All up to you, because he said he wanted it as difficult, and he got it immediately. It was Jared Cook. Now I
Called your
believe
shot.
I'll be honest. I believe Nick is like 6 for 6 on this, or 5 for 5 so far. I think Nick has gotten every single one. This was the fastest. This is a record. This is the fastest we've gotten anyone. I didn't even really get to it. What gave it away? Because I
I'm still
didn't know
writing
he
down
was
the
on the.
teams.
I didn't know he was on the Rams.
Drafted by the Titans and played for the Chargers after the Saints.
I probably would have gotten it after the Chargers if I got the years, but I had no idea he was on the Rams. And yeah, it was just the Rams threw me off a lot. I don't remember Jared
Rams,
Cook.
yeah, Rams the only one on this list that I was just like,
I remember.
but that Raiders Saints, that could have been a lot. That
Raiders,
could have been a good
Saints,
amount.
Chargers is.
Could have been a good amount right there.
I'll let everybody know I was really excited about signing Jared Cook. By the way, I was happy about it. Now, fair.
I loved him until the end.
Yeah, I would.
And then all your dreams were fumbled away.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. That is his sole. Yeah, I can't hate him. He was efficient enough with us, but I think I don't even remember the contract, but I think contract compared to the signing was probably not where the value was. All right, but to get into our final talking point today, we're going to be talking about minicamp. Camp wrapped up, and we have our guys that we have kept our eyes on. We're excited to see, and we think are under the radar. Not a lot of people are really paying attention to. Nick, do you want to start us off with who your underrated underdog for minicamp is?
Yeah, absolutely. My minicamp underdog would be tight end Jack Stoll. I think he's really made a name for himself out this offseason program. Had multiple catches last week in 7-on-7s and has found the end zone a couple times as well. Him and Spencer Rattler seem to have a good connection. And it's really uncertain tight end room right now, and he's a great blocker. He's a physical blocker. And the Saints don't currently have a fullback set in stone. I don't believe they even have one on the roster at the moment. So carrying those tight ends could be beneficial, especially with the uncertainty in your 7th-round pick, Maliki Metaval. You have Dallin Holker, who's still dealing with injuries. Michael Jacobson and Trayton Welch haven't really made a name for themselves, and I have no worry for Jawan Johnson, but Foster Moreau is recovering from that leg injury as well. So we will see how that pans out, but I really like how Jack Stoll has looked. And I also like Dante Pettis. I think he's also showed up a little bit as well.
Yeah, and I want to kind of talk about, because you named a lot of names there. That's because it is a lot of guys in that tight end room. You got your 7th-round pick. You have Dallin Holker, which a lot of people are really big fans of. I would say probably mostly because of Combine clip that went viral for a one-hand catch. But there's a lot of names in that room, but there's a lot of guys that are uncertain. Foster Moreau has that injury. Taysom Hill has the injury. Jawan Johnson is your only guy that's really set in stone and proved it to you. And the Saints proved they like him, give him $30 million over 3 years. So it'd be big for Stoll to be as good. And like you said, no fullback. And there's no mold for that either. With Foster Moreau out, Stoll's probably going to get a lot of playing time just based on his blocking ability.
And I think it's important to also note he spent time in Philly with Kellen Moore and new run game coordinator TJ Pagnetti last year, who was outstanding for the Eagles and will really bring some fire to this Saints run game. And if Jack Stoll already knows the process, I think it's really beneficial for you.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say, that he was with the Eagles last year. But when Jack Stoll was signed by the Saints, I wrote an article about it, and I was looking at Jack Stoll's just past playing, and I looked at it more of like, okay, this is a blocking tight end. Saints don't really have that right now with Foster Moreau out, because Foster Moreau is such a good blocker. So that's that role. But as you said, in training camp or in minicamp, Jack Stoll has been showing out, doing really well in a very uncertain tight end room. And for when I wrote my 53 or early 53-man roster cut, I'm fairly certain I had Jack Stoll as a cut, but I'm not sure anymore. I really think he can make the roster, and might as well in this open room have competition. And I think he could really make an impact during the season.
Jack Stoll was a guy I watched a lot of during college because he went to Nebraska. It's 20 minutes from my house. So I watched a lot of him. He's a mauler. I'm excited to see him in the Saints uniform and see how he's been killing it so far in minicamp. He does well in training camp, but I think he's a great pick. I think he's going to be a good pickup and someone who can definitely put in some solid snaps on the team.
And I want to double back on this because you guys mentioned he was with Kellen Moore. And I think we all know Kellen Moore wants to run the ball this year. You got rookie quarterbacks or young quarterbacks, and you just watched Saquon Barkley go for 2,000 yards. Why would you not want to try to run the ball? And then, like Caleb said, Foster Moreau's injury he's basically your only blocking tight end on the roster. He's dealing with injury. Taysom Hill, it can't be that fullback build that you want. He's not going to be able to run the ball like he did before anyways, even if he is there week 1 and ready. So I think Jack Stoll would be a great he's probably just by opportunity, by availability, going to get his chance because if he's healthy and he's ready to go, that just right there puts him on some play time.
Yeah,
I
and
do
kind
want
of
to take a
connecting this.
quick. Sorry, I just want to put a quick, really big circle back real quick. Going back to Gabe Davis, actually, I think that could be beneficial, his run blocking ability as well.
Okay, you're stealing everything I'm saying because I was about to say that going to the wide receiver room, one of the issues with having small wide receivers, they aren't great blockers. And so having as many good blockers kind of I know tight ends, receivers are separate, but the receiving core is really important because Chris Olave hasn't shown great consistency when blocking. Same thing with Rashid Shaheed. And I don't know how Brandon Cook's blocking has been since he left the Saints, but that's a big issue. So, I mean, as you said, Gabe Davis would be a great addition, but Jack Stoll's role in in this offense is going to be pretty important in the season if he makes the roster. And same thing, Dallin Holker actually. I'm fairly certain, I don't know PFF grade blocking or anything, but I'm fairly certain he did well in blocking near the end of the season or throughout the season because blocking was such an important part of the Kubiak offense. It's like the biggest part of the Kubiak offense. And also it helps with young tackles because if a tight end can help the tackle out a little bit from the edge pressure, then it's going to just help that tackle develop a little bit more, which is important for our first round pick.
Now, I can't say for certain how well Dallin Holker did as a blocker last year, but I can say in college he was described as a horrible blocker, absolutely terrible, and that was the biggest knock on him. So I could say if the Saints come cut down day and they're looking for this mold, and even though maybe Dallin Holker did come on as a better run blocker last year, I don't know because coming out of college it was a big concern that he got a lot of knocks for.
Yeah,
He
and it
actually
was, and
finished the season last year with a 66.8 run blocking grade, which is not
that's what
terrible at all, and
that's what I
finished
felt like.
the
I
last
felt
game
like
of
it
the
got
season with a
better.
70. Yeah, he
Mhm.
definitely took strides in that this year, 100%, or
Which
last year,
is great
100%.
for the Kub. Like that's what the Kubiak scheme does. It just makes players better blockers. And if Kellen Moore just sees some of these players that are good blockers naturally, they're probably going to make the roster. And I mean, that's the whole conversation. That's another massive conversation with the running back room. Kendre Miller has
Right.
not been able to block. Alvin Kamara is one of the best blocking running backs in the league. He will knock you. Let me stop. He will knock people on the ground. That's not something Kendrick Miller has done. Maybe Devin Neal can do that. I hope Devin Neal, he's bigger, so I hope Devin Neal can block. I don't know if Marcus Yarns is going to be the best blocker, but that's the biggest gripe on Kendrick Miller. And that's just the whole issue with having some of these smaller players. And that's the whole reason why we keep talking about the running back room and the wide receiver room and how many issues there are because there's just holes here. And that's why Jack Stoll can fill that hole. And that's just how you make rosters at this point in a more of a struggling team with a bunch of battles, it's the little things.
Go back to the running room quick. I know Devin Neal's an outstanding run blocker. I'll just say that about him. My one Devin Neal thing about a day. But outstanding run blocker, so he can definitely help fill that kind of role.
And I think that has a lot to do with the recent release of Xavier Valade, who has been standing out at training or at minicamp, excuse me, really prominent in the passing game. Just don't know if he has that versatility the Saints are looking for in a crowded running back room.
This is crazy because I'm going to add on to the running back talk that we completely got into randomly. But because Caleb said this, and I've heard plenty of us say it in other episodes, and I've never said anything. I do want to say it now. Alvin Kamara is a good pass blocker, off of it. He reads. But Alvin Kamara has not always been very, over the last 2 seasons, assignments-wise, he hasn't been able to pick up on the assignments, and he's let quite a few guys get past him. Now, I don't know how we really get into this conversation, because this is a whole running back conversation about Jack Stoll, but I just want to say briefly, assignment-wise, with more rookie quarterbacks, that may be a concern as well, because you got to identify the mic, and, let Kamara know who's blocking assignment. Kamara's got to pick it up right. So, just brief over it, I do think Alvin Kamara's a good pass blocker, too, but there's always been that issue going on the past few years. Maybe it's a Derek Carr issue, I don't know, but I just want to head on to that.
Yeah, and I also think that has a lot to do with Eric McCoy missing 10 games last season. He's the heart and soul and the prominent voice in that on that offense as a whole. To be honest with you, finished the season with a 94.6 run blocking grade. So if he's not on the field, that the blocking is going to take a hit no matter what. So hopefully when he's back out there, it'll get the guys back on the same page, because I know that was an issue of concern last year when the Saints were just cycling through centers, picking guys up off the couch. It's hard to be on the same page at that point.
And just a little point also, if Taysom Hill does start the season on the IR, or I think Jack Stoll's going to like fill that spot. I think when Taysom Hill's out, Jack Stoll's going to be on the roster, and then when Taysom Hill's back, Jack Stoll might get cut or put on the practice squad. Like I just think that's going to be how it works because, as you said, there's no fullback on this roster, and like Taysom Hill is that overall role. But just with 53-man roster cuts, there's kind of definition of positions that kind of needs to happen. And I think Jack Stoll might just be put as a fullback at first and then just used as a tight end so they can have more tight ends on the roster because Kellen Moore also loves tight ends. He utilizes them heavily. And the Saints don't have that room, as we said, or they do not have a good enough room for him to use that. Kind of like what we were talking about with Brandon Staley and that scheme. Not all the pieces are there. So you need as many weapons as possible.
All right, yeah, I agree with you, and I think the Jack Stoll talk is very interesting because there's so many tight ends on the roster right now, and I mean they drafted a guy in the 7th round. He wasn't the last overall pick for the Saints, actually. That was Fidel Diggs, but you know they've invested into it somewhat in the draft. They've added guys through free agency, and there's just been guys that have been reoccurring figures. They got veterans. The tight end room is definitely a good question, and I'm glad that you brought up Jack Stoll before Caleb. Who was your pick to be that minicamp underdog standout that not everybody's keeping the closest eye on?
Yeah, I think people might be forgetting this name because he really isn't being talked about as much throughout this offseason training camp and or mini camp and everything, and also because of how much people are or how bad people are talking about the cornerback room with that position group. But Rico Payton, no one's talking about him, and I think it's a mistake. Rico Payton was my pick for who's going to be the UDFA gem last year. He struggled in practice, but in games, he made plays. Oh, he made a lot of plays throughout preseason. During the season, he made a bunch of plays on special teams, on punts. He would tackle the punt returner right away. It was amazing to watch. I just think he will make this roster just because of his effort. And I think with how wide open this cornerback room is, and I know we talked about free agents and cornerbacks that the Saints can bring in, and I do think they will bring another one in, and it's going to be a long road for Rico Payton to make the roster. But I do think it happens. And I just think that with this competition right now, for that third spot, I'm going to say that third and fourth spot on the roster, it's Isaac Adam, Ugo Amadi, Rajon Wright, Quincy Riley, and now Jaden Price, who was just signed. That's with Rico Payton. That's a lot of players Rico Payton has to beat out. So I don't think it's going to be for the third spot. And I don't know if it's going to be for the fourth spot. But if he could just get that special teams role and still make plays during the preseason, I think he's going to get more snaps this season because that was my biggest gripe when the Saints were losing last season. Why wasn't Rico Payton playing? I didn't understand it. The cornerback room was already hurt and didn't have Marshawn Lattimore. It's just the perfect position to just have your young player and see what you have. I just want him to have more snaps this season. At the least, he's going to be a special teams player, which I'm fine with.
Now, before anyone actually adds on to it, I actually want Drew to go ahead and name his player just so we can bounce it off because I think this is a good conversation. So, Drew, go ahead and give your case for your player, and then we'll respond kind of to it that way.
I have another cornerback. Love Rico Payton, but I'm going Rajon Wright. He's UDFA 2 years ago in the 2023 draft class out of Oregon State. He was on the team, I believe, last summer. Didn't do anything, but I think this one he could. In minicamp already, he had a diving interception. He's a playmaker. He had 4 interceptions his final 2 years at Oregon State. He's 6'2", 194. Caleb was talking about Rico Payton. He doesn't have a direct path to the roster. He's going to have to earn it in training camp, earn it in the preseason. He's going to have to play his heart out. But I do believe he's got a shot to surprise a lot of people and make his name known.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to Rico Payton real quick, ferocious tackler, had 10 tackles on special teams last season, can blitz the quarterback. You saw him pick up a sack in the preseason. And Rajon Wright also had a great preseason last year. Week 2, actually recording an 82.3 coverage grade with 2 PBUs. Those are 2 guys that could really make a name for themselves. And I do want to touch on Jaden Price that Caleb talked about. 13 PBUs, 27 tackles, and a sack while also handling some punt duties and kickoff duties in the UFL last year. So I really think there's a lot to be There's a lot of potential here in this cornerback room. And if, like you said, Caleb, I feel like they should have let Rico Payton get the chance to develop last year, especially during the situation they were in from a record standpoint. You weren't really playing for much there. The best you could do is see what you've got for the year prior or for the year after. But yeah, I really think Rico Payton has a good shot to even be that outside third cornerback for this team. He's just a ferocious player. He's got heart. And I really liked Trey Fluellen before he did end up getting released. Hopefully he will be back when it comes to the practice squad and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a bunch of guys in here that could really put on for the Saints if they just develop the way that they hope.
And for defensive backs, I mean, we talked about it already here, but I mean, the special teams it's going to be your money. That's where you make it, and then from there you prove it through preseason, through practice, and everything like that. Where both guys had a pretty good preseason last year, and then now you're looking again at what we've been saying before: is it's a crowded room right now because it's a larger roster, more names to pick through, and the Saints are still clearly not satisfied with it with all the guys they have brought in for not interviews, for workouts, things like that, including Asante Samuel Jr., who we talked about earlier. And so it's a big question mark in that cornerback room, and it would be an amazing thing for one of these guys to actually step it up, get the chance, because like you said, I don't think any of these guys really have gotten a chance to prove it yet, but step it up, get this chance to prove that they can. And as a good tackler for Rico Payton, that's big in a 3-4. That's going to be massive in a 3-4. This is mostly zone defense as a good tackler, so he can make his money through special teams and then go ahead and get his way onto the roster, maybe find playtime through injuries or just bad play, or just find his way on the roster, find ways to get snaps, and from there, I mean, I think Rico Payton could. He has shown to be a guy that he has this athleticism. He showed it in preseason last year, and that's kind of all we have to go off of. But from what we've seen of him, it's been nice and it's exciting. Actually, he's been an exciting player.
And I think
Yeah, and I do
there's
think
just
it's
so much.
important to note, real quick, Caleb, I do think it's important to note that those stats that I said for Jaden Price was with the Arlington Renegades in the UFL last year, because I did not clarify that, and I wanted that to be known. So
I think you said UFL. Sorry. I think you got it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think with Rico Payton, as we said, like special teams, it's just going to be so important where these players make their mark, because again, this cornerback room is so uncertain. It just so many things can go wrong, but also so many things can go right. Number one corners are not up for grabs, but Kuli McKinstry, we don't know what he's going to be after year one. Paulson Adebo, I did it again. I did it last week. Alante Taylor has struggled recently. We don't know what that's going to be. Hopefully he plays better. That fourth corner spot is fully up for grabs. I think there's going to be a lot of changes throughout the season, and also this is a whole new scheme. There's a lot of moving parts here. So although there's a lot of players in front of Rico Payne and even Rajon Wright and Jaden Price, I just think that there is still a path for them to make it. And I don't know about Rajon Wright with his special teams, but I know, as we said, Rico Payne, his defensive tackling on special teams is amazing, but also Jaden Price is a punt returner. He is a great punt returner. He was let me think of what college. I think he went to North Dakota State. He was a very good punt returner there, and he followed it up in the UFL. And then also, funny, Jaden Price is also a former Falcon, and I already talked about Matt Judon, former Falcon. But so I think just the path the cornerback room is too murky for us to say, like, oh, none of these cornerbacks have a chance if they're still on the roster. And that's kind of my thing with Rico Payton, where if he's already I know it's a new coaching staff, but he's been here for a year. He's already had the special teams he's already had the special team success. He's done well in preseason. He might not show it in practice, but if he does it again in preseason, I just think there's a lot of potential there.
All right, yeah, and I mean, it's hard to keep talking about Rico Payton because he is a fan favorite as well. So I mean, a lot of what he showed last year, like you said, it wasn't really through practice or much. It was in game. He showed up when it mattered. And I think just from that alone, the Saints have a spot to stash him on the roster because I think he's too valuable to be a practice squad guy. You put him on your practice squad, I don't think Rico Payton's going to be on your practice squad very long. Now, I don't know how long it takes for him to get his chance, especially if Saints bring in another cornerback, because they already brought in Isaac Idom, who's on a 3-year deal, and even though it's only a $9 million contract, it's a lack of commitment in the sense of money, but it is a 3-year deal, which is still kind of a significant to note. So But I think the Saints do have to eventually find out what you have Rico Payton. I think this preseason for both guys really will be a really big one to see what happens. I believe they're probably going to be our two starters on the outside once it comes to it in preseason. You're going to see a lot of those guys, and I think it's going to be big.
Yeah, you do make a great point there. The Saints no longer have that luxury of having an undrafted free agent out of D2 Pittsburgh State that no one knows about. Rico Payton has made a name for himself among the league's executives and scouts and all that stuff. He will not be on the practice squad long if that's where he ends up. I see a similar situation to Monty Rice, who got signed by the Titans off of the Saints practice squad last year. He was no longer a secret, and those things can happen if you don't let guys see the field.
Yeah, and to get to our final guy, it's actually who I picked. It's a rookie. It's Saints 7th round pick, Fidel Diggs out of Syracuse. I did a lot of scouting throughout this draft, and I'll be honest, I did a lot on the defensive line. I thought Saints were going to be real heavy on defensive line. And I picked 7th round pick, Fidel Diggs. I mocked him to the Saints twice, and I think I did 3 or 4 mock drafts, and then 2 of them I did him. And now I had him going in the 4th and 5th round, where he ended up dropping in the 7th round, which was a little shock to me. He's a large frame, 6'4", 257-pound guy. He can play. He has the versatility to play on your outside, to be your outside linebacker, and sometimes even at Syracuse, he fit inside the middle on the defensive tackle. So he's got a large frame and versatility. Now he lacks as a run defender, which is a big concern in a 3-4. If your top 3 can't really get to the runner, it'll be a problem for your outside guys. But his versatility, and one of the reasons I actually decided to bring him up was because he actually saw a few snaps during minicamp with the ones. Now, to be fair, it's a limited, you're trying to see what you got, but he got some snaps with the ones, and that's very impressive. The Mario Davis behind him, everything like that. So to me, that means something. That's your 7th round pick. And it's a guy I liked scouting, and usually when I scout a guy, I kind of cling on him for a while when the Saints pick him up, and that's partially why I picked him, because the Saints did pick him up, and it's a guy that I feel like I know a lot and I invested a lot into, and I hope that he can actually find something with the Saints, because again, you need these guys, these young players, to step up for a defense where you're switching into a new scheme.
Yeah, and I bet it comes to no surprise to any Saints fans. Another guy with an outstanding RAS score had a 9.36 RAS score out of a possible 10, ranking 131st out of 2,229 defensive ends from 1987 to 2025. Just an athletic freak. Had 9 sacks at Texas A&M, at Syracuse, just a really, really prominent pass rusher that could definitely add some speed to this group with his 4.57 second 40-yard dash.
Yeah, my main focus with Fidel Diggs is outside linebacker. As you said, it's the same thing that I mentioned with Matt Judon. It's just the Saints do not have a lot of actual outside linebackers in the roster, and he has versatility, which is amazing. But I think that outside linebacker role is going to be where he is going to show his athleticism and really make a difference throughout the season. I can't wait for preseason to see Fidel Diggs, because I think he's really going to show out in preseason. I don't know if it's going to be extraordinary, but I think it's going to be a guaranteed roster spot, and just because of how uncertain that position is.
And the Saints got him at great value. Again, it's not 100% sure, right? These mock draft simulators and everything else, the media boards aren't always accurate, but he was projected to be an early day 3 pick. The Saints ended up getting him with their final pick, I think 254. So there's value there. Athletic guy, you can kind of, again, when the guys are athletes and you can just draft an athlete down the board, that's pretty significant, and it's effective. Like I said, he could play on the outside as an edge rusher or even as one of these 3-4 linebackers, and that's kind of one of his biggest things, because the production hasn't always been there for him, but he did get 7.5 sacks in his final year with Syracuse, and I think, again, just a big guy, a fast guy, long frame. It's just, he has the tools, and it'd be impressive to see what he can do in preseason and if he can impress the team. But like I said, there was a few, and it could be rotation things, but he saw some snaps with the ones during minicamp, and that is also pretty significant to note. But with that being said, that will wrap up episode 5. I believe we're on episode 5. I hope everybody enjoyed.